Okay, this is Rabbi Delcau's class on
this is for you.
the Shema, and we are moving furniture around. Okay. Today is March 28th, 2026, and this is in the Social Hall of Mount Sinai Congregation here in Cheyenne, Wyoming.
Yeah.
We have the Ravinas joining us by Zoom. I'm not going to mute this. That way you have the ability to, I'm not going to ask you to mute. That way you have the ability to ask questions if you want to participate.
All right, friends. All right. So listen, we're sitting now sort of in one of these in-between moments, right? And you know, Shabbat is ending.
Rabbi,
yes.
I interrupt you. Can I get you to sit here so that
on
Zoom they can see?
Okay. I know. I was trying to sit in between tables. Okay. That's okay. We'll do this. Okay. I should have resumed. I should have said, let me send him a copy. All right. Okay. So here we are in this in-between moment. Shabbat is ending, right? And our regular week is about to begin, and we do that. We'll have that when we do Havdalah, right? That's we separate between the holy and, if you want, right, the mundane. So we have this kind of concept, right? In Judaism, when we think about it, we pay attention to these, to these types of transitions all the time. And I think that the Shema itself, right, it lives right in this kind of an exact space, because we learn about, we're going to learn about and we know about the Shema. When we say it, when we lie down, when we rise, right? So it's one of these kind of in between, things. So, let's talk about a little bit about some personal memories from all of you. Did anybody say? And by the way, let me say, there's no judgment. Okay, from my perspective as a rabbi, what I always try to say is let me try to help you and let's show and learn things together. But did anyone say Shema at night growing up? Do you have a memory from that? Your parents, grandparents? Okay, so Noam, tell us about what that was like. What did you do? How did that go?
You have to say like
Okay.
Like before you go to sleep.
Well, and you have to tell him what the mitah is. So he's saying when he gets ready to go to sleep, the mitah is your bed. So as soon as he's in his bed, his parents are saying to him, what?
Shema is like have some slow breathing, not very long. When you wake up, you say Modeh.
Right. Which is, by the way, in the prayer book too, right? Modeh is also in the prayer book. I didn't do it this morning.
Orthodox religion, you need to have like a water and I need to get some more air. Cup of water. When you wake up, you need to wash your hands. Then you go out. Say Modeh.
Right. Exactly. I don't want to go into why we're doing it, while we're washing our hands. So there's a whole lot of reasons, some of these kind of things as well. But did anybody else have a experience for that?
I wouldn't say it's an experience, but I use the Havdalah app. Everything's on the time. So I use the Havdalah app.
Okay.
And it tells you what to say, when to say it. So you don't even have to know the timing. It gives you exactly what to do and when. And it just pops up on the app.
Okay, so that's interesting, right? Here we are in modernity, and now we're starting to think about, hey, you don't have to think. We'll we'll sort of tell you what to do, right?
Right.
That concept. So okay, that's an interesting concept. We could, we have fodder with that concept as well, right?
It's popping up also in Shabbat.
But it doesn't do the Shabbat, but it tells you the candle lighting time. So
Right.
app won't work on Shabbat for obvious reasons.
Yeah, they turn their phones up. They turn their phones
Yeah.
up too. But we can come back. We'll come back to
Run
that.
here and Shabbat. So we can do them here.
I feel you. Anybody else with with a memory of what it means to say yeah?
I mean, it's slightly different because I didn't grow up saying it every day, but my father references
Mhm.
with the stone.
Yeah.
Of course, we had the door down the house, so I knew the prayer was in there. I didn't always know, we didn't always say it.
Okay. All right. So the notion that we know it's there. Do we say it? That's okay. I mean, look, this is another thing. And by the way, so when we talk about mezuzah, this is a sidetrack. We're not going to get all the way into that. There are whole teachings on mezuzah, but it's not the box. Even though people are like, yeah, I need to have a nice little mezuzah, has nothing to do with that. Has everything to do with the parchment that's inside the box that has the Shema and the subsequent verses. That a scribe will pen on that. Same thing, by the way, for tefillin, right? You have four things, on the head, and it's all those four things are written on one scroll in the arm. But that's another teaching. No other memories. Any memories of like growing up in Boston with it? Doing these kind of,
I grew up with no.
No. Okay. All right. Yeah.
I know.
No. Rega.
I remember like in Hebrew school growing up, like it must have been like second, first grade or whatever.
Yeah.
And they used to like remind us like here's what you're supposed to do. And you're like, oh, you have to say Shema when you go before you go to bed, like when they do all their classes and teaching stuff.
Right.
I remember doing that and then proceeding to like go home and then say before I went to bed a couple times, and then obviously I would forget sometimes, tired or whatever. But it's like that sort of you learn from someone. That's how I.
Okay. All right. So, again, it's something that's very simple when we think about, what we do in Jewish traditions. And so, the question becomes, even for the rabbis, there's debate about how we even do this. What does it mean to say Shema? How do we understand that kind of concept? What does the Torah mean? The rabbis will have the discussion. And not only what does the Torah mean, but how seriously should we take the words Shema and even the understanding of, doing that. So, again, on Shabbat, everything starts to slow down. We're becoming more aware. So how do we carry these concepts with us into the next week? So this is where we're going, with the teaching. All right. So let's take a look now at our, here at the page. All right. And I've given you, right, at the very beginning, here is Shema. By the way, that melody that we did this last night and this morning, some people think that comes from Sinai, which like from Mount Sinai. It does not. That is like a tune from the 18th century. This is not that. It's not that old. If you were to ask Noam, for instance, in the Sephardic custom, they would even have a different melody, growing up. In the Torah itself, or if you want to see from what we know, the Masoretic text and the Masoretes and what they've left us, that what we find here is if you look, I left in the trope marks. Now look here at Shema, right on the page. Look at Shema. You see Shema Yisrael, right? But you see the little trope mark under the mem. You see under the aleph. You see one under the tetragrammaton, which is the word for God. One under Eloheinu, right, our God, and one under the tetragrammaton again. And then you have the sof pasuk there, the end of the verse, right? So if I was going to chant that, and when it is chanted in synagogue, when it's chanted in the, on that Shabbat where they're chanting, it sounds like this. That's all right. Let them have fun. It's okay. Here. Oh, they're fighting. Okay. Yeah. All right. Here we go. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. That's what it sounds like when you chant. So even, the melody that and I play like 3 or 4 different melodies, by the way, on the guitar, that some of you might be familiar with and some of you might not even be familiar with. So, this notion of what we bring to it, there's a lot of mysterious thought, a lot of mysterious concept, all right? So let's go and look at the Rambam, all right? This is what the Rambam is teaching, okay? And this comes out of now he's teaching this in his main work, right? The Mishnah, right? The Mishneh Torah, sorry. Mishneh Torah, not Mishnah, that's it, but it's about the Mishnah, but it's Mishneh Torah. And I was mentioning in services, he does 2 main works that he's forever remembered by. He does this Mishneh Torah, which is all the halakha, and he tried to write everything. When you read the Hebrew in here, like I brought, even from this first part, it's actually very easy Hebrew to read, and he meant that to be for the Am Haaretz, which is sort of pejorative, but the people who have a hard time, reading Hebrew, the people who aren't scholars, that's how he wrote it. And then he took all of his theological theories and he put those in another book called The Guide for the Perplexed, go figure. And in Hebrew and in Greek, we call it More Nivuchim, the Guide for the Perplexed, all right? And so it's very interesting to study some of those pieces over time as well. I don't know if you guys have studied that. But this is what he's saying here. So let's take a look, and then I'm going to have some other people read. He says, look, Pa'amayim b'chol yom kor'in kiryat Shema. So he says, Pa'amayim is how we say twice in Hebrew. B'chol yom, each day. Korin, that comes from Koreh, like Kiryat Torah, when we have when we say in the Siddur, we're going to do the Torah portion. The Koreh is how we say we're going to read it, but it's really kind of calling it out. Likro is to call out. And then when do we do that? He says, Ba'erev, right? Erev is what? In the evening, right? Uva boker, in the morning. Now, how do we know that? He says, Shene'emar, because it is said in Devarim, not you. What is Devarim? Somebody tell me. What? Deuteronomy, exactly. So he says in Deuteronomy what? Vav is 6, so Vav Zayin is 6, 7, and Deuteronomy 6, 7.
Uh-oh. Don't tell it in front of the kids.
Oh, right, yeah, exactly, right. He says, Uvshoch becha, uvkumecha, right? So shachav is when you lie down, and the root kum is when we say that we stand. So you should do it when you lie down and when you rise up, right? So he says, now how do we know about that? He says bisha'ah, so sha'ah is like in the hour or in the time. Shederech b'nei adam, right? Shochvim, okay? He says, so we know that it's when people are beginning to lie down, right, or to sleep. The zehu lila. So when people start to sleep, that is what time? Yeah, sometime at night, right? I mean, now, obviously back then we didn't have people so much working graveyard shifts, although maybe in the Beit HaMikdash we did, because from what I was saying this morning, you have to keep, the fire sort of, everything has to be, running smoothly, right? But outside of that, we didn't have the graveyard shift. And he says, what else? He says, Uvasha'ah, said, in the hours, Shederech b'nei Adam omdim, that this is the time when someone what? Stands up. Omed is to stand. By the way, anytime you're not sure about what things mean in Hebrew, here's another one for Omed, right? Where in prayer do we hear something that sounds like Omdim? Amidah, right? So what is Amidah? That's where we get the Baruch Atah Adonai. That is the standing prayer. And in fact, what do? We stand. So that's how you remember. Anytime you see that, so Omdim is for that. So this is what he says. This is what he says. You have to put yourself into Rambam's mindset. And he says, hey, this is how you have to be listening. This is what we need to be doing. All right. So, and what we don't have here is there are all kinds of notes that come with, I mean, I'm giving you the notes in English, but there are all kinds of notes and people that comment on the Rambam. So this is one of the notes that comes and says, okay, I want you to look at Mishnah Brachot, okay, Halacha 1:1. So, he says, so take a look at that. All right. So, and I forget who, Courtney, just because I didn't remember your name, so I wanted to say Courtney. So, Courtney, do you mind reading for us where it says from when?
From when does one recite Shema in the evening? From the time when the priests enter to partake of their Tefillah. Until when does the time for the recitation of the evening Shema extend? Okay,
then 1 second, I just want to let you know. So the Mishnah, it doesn't have until when does the, I put that in there. So I'm just letting you know that like that's me saying, okay, until when does the time, so but the Mishnah continues and it says
until the end of the first watch. These are the words of Rabbi Eliezer. The sages teach until midnight. Says until dawn.
Okay, so this is interesting. Okay, so now we start talking about when do we recite Shema? We sort of have this kind of context when things are, when people lie down, right? That's to say, sometime at night. So you might think, and you hear the Talmudists will say, they start to turn their hand up. Well, you might think, that once you go to sleep, that's it. But what if you forgot to say Shema, right? I forget who that was. Who was the guy that was right here? Noah. Yeah. So Noah is over here and he says, listen, I forgot to say it. But what do they teach? Well, when can you say it? He says, well, you can say it until the end of the first watch. Okay, well, what does that mean? That's what they're asking. But that could be until, according to what Rabban Gamliel says, according to dawn, but other sages say until midnight. So, so even, by the way, this gives way to when you hear a rabbinic dictum, that is to say how the rabbis argue in the Mishnah or in the Talmud, right? And how do we know what's right or what's wrong? You sort of go by how it is in the community. If your rabbi says, no, listen, I practice, it goes to midnight. Well, then you sort of say, well, maybe the halakha in our community is until midnight, but the rabbi says that. I agree with Rabbi, Eliezer, or Rabbi Gamliel, because we see him in the Haggadah, you have until dawn, right? So this is sort of, and by the way, there's a book that's an English book. I'm sure that we have this book somewhere in the library. It's been out for years. It's called 2 Jews and 3 Opinions. All right. By the way, the title of that is absolutely incorrect. It's 2 Jews and 40 Opinions. That's how it really rolls. Okay. So yeah, that's right. That's exactly where it comes from. All right, he's reciting the Mishnah. Be agreed. All right, so this is what we learned. Okay, so now, there we go. All right, but now we're going to get the explanation from that. Would somebody else like to elucidate for us?
Go ahead.
I would love it.
I'll start right. An instance occurred where Rabban Gamliel's son returned.
Okay, by the way, and I put in there, they didn't just come, it's like they went out and there was no chip on the back of it, like they didn't have their phone and all this kind of stuff back then. And so they came back late.
Emphasis, very late.
Yes.
From a place of drinking or a wedding.
It's not really clear when the rabbis, present that, by the way. So you can kind of pick however you want to pick. I mean, the rabbis would say, they came back from, this wedding. I think they're out drinking. But, go, keep going.
They said to him, as they were celebrating, we did not recite Shema.
Okay, so they have realized, like Noah realized, I forgot to recite Shema, and they came back what? Really late. So, and they could have done it. It says, truly, it says, up there from the Rambam, Ushach bacha uvkumecha. So we sort of could have done it while we were walking because we were up. I mean, but they didn't do anything, right? So here's what he says.
he said to them, if dawn has not yet come, you are obligated to recite the Shema.
All right, so they didn't do it. They're walking along. It's past midnight, right? Because they came home very late. I mean, think of the bar that you went out to when you were a young person. I saw a lot of young people out downtown, by the way. The bars down there. And so, you're out really late and you're thinking, I didn't say it. And your father's the rabbi. And he's like, yeah, the dawn's not here yet. And by the way, whose ruling is it until dawn comes? So this is his ruling, right? So he's telling them, but it hasn't come yet, so you're obligated to what? Recite Shema. All right? Keep going, Tamshif.
So emphasis, since Rabban Gamaliel's halakhic opinion disagreed with that of the sages, he explained to his son that he and the sages agreed. Okay, now this is the height of narcissistic egotism that many of the rabbis, and I'm not going to lie to you, in rabbinic dictum, it's like, what rabbi, let me put it to you in modern terms, who out-Jews, each other, who's more Jewish, who's, that kind of thing. Now, so I had to give it to you because, see, Rabban Gamaliel is, he has this concept that his opinion has got to be right, but in order for his opinion to be right, he can't be wrong with any of the other sages. You see what I'm saying? So I got to tell you. All right. So Tamshif. Okay. And that is not only with regard to the halakha of the recitation of Shema, but rather wherever the sages say until midnight, the mitzvah may be performed.
Okay. So you see how the Mishnah did that, with that. So out of just the Shema, and this is where the Rambam would tell you, you need to listen, because the people that are giving us notes on this, concept are telling you it isn't just Shema, but anything where the sages say that you have until midnight and you don't get the mitzvah done, right? Then don't worry, you can perform it all the way to dawn. By the way, does anybody? This could be a test for you here. What do we say when we know that we've completed a mitzvah? How do we say there's a word that we say that we are? What are you when you've completed? Do you know? Okay, good. What are you? What do you say when you've completed a mitzvah? What do you say? That would be a good thing. But I will have to say, and this is an honest thing, Steve. Listen. There are people who do mitzvot who you and I would agree are not mitzvahs. Okay, he would tell you that from living in Israel. So I just honestly that's. But I love the way you think. I love that. All right. So what do we call it?
I don't know. We're just waiting.
All right, here we go. What do we call it? Do you know? Yeah, but we have the whole concept of. So we call it. We say that you are Yotzei. You say that you. That's right. That's right. Exactly. So what we say is like Yitziat Mitzrayim, that the people came out of Egypt. We're going to say that a lot at Pesach, right? So when you do a mitzvah, you say that you're coming out of the mitzvah. You say that you are Yotzei. So he's meaning to tell them here that in order to be Yotzei, you have all the way until dawn to do it. All right, now let's go to the Talmud. This is in Brachot. All right, so Brachot is there's a whole tractate in Talmud for blessings. All right, a whole tractate, and studying it, by the way, is fascinating. All right, so here's Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel. They disputed the proper way to recite Shema. Now, just so that we're clear, everybody is, I don't want to make any. Some people have heard of Hillel, right? All right, but it's not, when we say that we've heard of Hillel and you hear some of Hillel's, decision making, it's not only just Hillel, it's Beit Hillel, because he had a whole, school of thought there, right? He had a whole yeshiva, and so they were all learning together, and that's where the halakha comes from. By the way, his opponent, right, is Shammai, right? And so they're always having this, they're always having these opposing views, right? Both. You have this. All right, so here we go. Now, who's reading Beit Shammai? I love it.
Beit Shammai said, in the evening, every person must be calm for perhaps on his or her side, saying Shema verse when you lie down.
Okay, just a second. So now here goes Beit Shammai. They're saying, well, it says in the evening, you're lying down, right? So if you're lying down, what does that mean? Now I give you this because we're also coming up on Pesach, right? So now, if you are a free person truly, and you're at Seder, and you are eating truly to be free, right? And you're not a slave, how are you supposed to eat?
You're supposed to lean from the left.
Right, so you lean, right? And so this notion of leaning is this notion of lying down. You have to picture what was going on, like, in the ancient Near East, because the Seder itself was called a symposium, right? And the symposium was, think about what the Greeks were doing, right? They were laying down on these pillows, right? Somebody's, bringing them the, grapes, right, on the beam and all this kind of stuff, and wine and all. So you have to picture what so that's why Beit Shammai is saying that in the evening, right, by Erev, you're doing what? You have to shachav, but that really means that you are what? Leaning over here. It's not just, so that's why, I put that in there. Now, Tamshikhi.
And in the morning, one must stand to recite Shema from the verse when you rise, as it says, when you lie down and when you rise. Beit Hillel says, every person recites Shema as she is on his or her way.
Okay, so just 1 second. Now, this raises one of the biggest concepts, and it comes right, from the Rambam giving it to us and starting to think about these things, right into, him pointing back with his, with the Tosafot, so to speak, the additions to the people who are making his comments on him, to how we recite Shema, particularly, let's just talk about America. All right? Now, I'm not, again, there's no judgment here. Rachel, right? I got that. So, Rachel, how do you think, we would be reciting Shema? Like, how do people recite Shema that you know, or how did you recite Shema?
Well, I wasn't.
Okay, well, no judgment. But had you seen multiple? Okay, no judgment. All right. So, okay, all right. So
it's there's differences in customs in communities.
Right.
In conservative and Orthodox services, typically the Shema says sitting.
Yeah.
In Reformed services, it is said standing. The specific reason for saying it's standing is that in the Reformed tradition, it's called the watchword of our faith.
Yeah. Okay, so you're about 80% there. All right, and I love it. All right, I love it.
The reason for sitting in Orthodox conservatives is that because it's just following the text within the Siddur.
Okay, so now we're at 9, and I love it. So let's get the other 10%. I love it. All right, so exactly what Jason was starting to say. We have this notion of in America. How do we understand what this particular Mishnah, the debate between Shammai and Hillel, is saying, right? And even in the Hillel and the Halakha usually goes in the direction of Beit Hillel, and he says every person recites Shema as he or she is on her way or on their way. All right, and Kidarcho, and so what does that mean? All right. Well, in the Orthodox, and forget just Orthodox conservative, in a traditional mode, because we're much more post-denominational now than we were in the 20th century. Okay. In that mode, when we're davening, okay, in that traditional mode, you're already sitting down. Okay, you are sitting down already. All right. And so, since you are sitting down already, then we have this notion of, okay, let's focus. And now we're going to say Shema, right? You've seen that many times and so forth, all right? And then in the heyday, if you want, of the Reform movement and really coming out of the 19th century and the 20th century, but particularly in the 20th century, you would see that, where I grew up, people would almost break their kneecaps in the pews, making sure they stood up for Shema. But part of that was because in the liturgy, and this is, you're right on the count of this, when we get in the liturgy,
what comes right, what's coming before Shema? When we're in Kiryat Shema, we're coming right after the Baruch Hu, okay? And so Baruch Hu is when we're called to prayer, except for every traditional understanding is after we do Baruch Hu, everybody does what? They sit down. Except for when we get to this notion where we believe that this is called the watchword of our faith, right? I'm not going to doubt that terminology, by the way. I'm just saying that we start to call it that. Once we start to call it that, then we start to have people saying, wait a minute, now we just got to stand all the way till we get to Shema, because in this mission, it basically says here, you see, Hillel gives us the halakha, but because you have to do it as you are. If we were to sit down, there would be no reason to just stand back up and say the Shema. But since we're already standing, then we say the Shema. So this is we got to add the rhetoric right. So this is a theological statement, right? That the Torah doesn't teach, right? In fact, we have to add that the Talmud doesn't teach that for the Reform movement, but they take it from the Talmud because, according to Hillel, you have to do it as you are. Now, okay, so this is very interesting. So now let's keep going. Tamshi.
As it said, and when you walk along the way, Romans 6:7. If so, Hillel wants to know, why was it?
Oh, sorry, that's my typo. Why was it said? Sorry.
Why was it said, when you lie down and when you rise? This is to show the time at which people lie down and the time at which people rise.
Right. So we got that, right? I mean, we got that from the Mishnah, and we got our understanding. So, in essence, we start to learn from the Talmud. Okay, Beit Hillel is also showing us, hey, this is when you should be lying down, and this is when you should be rising. Roughly, what's going on. So this is interesting in a modern sense, right? Because in a modern sense, like I said, we don't know. But do you work graveyard shifts in the hospital?
I work at 16 hours.
Oh, 16, right? Okay.
I started at 4:30
And go all. Okay, so see, we didn't have in Rambam. Anybody? I should not you. Does anybody else? No, you're not. Hang tight. Does anybody else know what Rambam's profession was? What was it?
He was a doctor and an advisor for one of the leaders in Egypt, I believe.
Not Egypt. He's
Alexandria.
no, you're right. That's in Alexandria. You're right.
So I'm
sorry.
close, right?
No, you're right. Sorry.
All right.
Yeah. So yeah, you're right. So he is so he's a doctor, right? Here's a doctor, but the Rambam doesn't know anything about, as you can see from what the sources are going to take, doesn't know anything about staying up all night as a doctor, right? So now we start to see how even though we know halakha, we have to think about, and this is where you start to get the reforming of Judaism to understand halakha over time, right? Yes.
This, what he said in Hebrew.
Yeah.
They can't hear you.
Okay, here, what he said, and I think he was understanding it. Why?
Right.
Because it says, בשעה שדרך בני אדם שופטים.
Right.
He did not wrote בשעה שבני אדם שופטים.
Right.
So when he said שדרך בני אדם is in the times that usually people go to sleep. Not everyone, but usually.
Right.
There is exception. And then in the morning, some
Usually,
the
right.
people waking up. So
Yeah. So he may not know, but which is where Rabbi Gamliel comes from and says, I could have these. My kids came in, and this is where we're fine. Go ahead.
Like with Chabad, it's important that everyone does things the same, dress the same, whatever it is the same, so the times have to be set. So that way everyone's doing it at the same time roughly.
Right.
Because there's a whole collectivist mindset that everyone has to be the same. Regardless of how you do it, it's more important that it's done the same. Everyone does it the same. Everyone does whatever they want.
Right. So interesting that you would say that, because I would love how Noam, is coming to read the text, because then I would say, based on, reading the text in this, in this way, that we learn that it's not monolithic. it's not just one way that, that Chabad got this from Sinai or something like that. It wasn't, because Rambam was way before that, right? Okay. So, let's finish out, what we said, because we have to get to Rabbi Tarfon, and I want to have a few questions before we finish up. So here we go. Rabbi Tarfon, who wants to read the Tarfon? A paragraph? Okay, great.
Rabbi Tarfon said, once I was one the way on the road.
I apologize. This is my typo. It's like, once I was like on the way. Sorry.
On the road. I reclined to recite Shema in accordance with the statement of Beit Shammai.
Beautiful.
Keep going.
Oh, yes, keep going, please.
Rabbi Tarfon was a disciple of Beit Hillel. He followed this mitzvah in accordance with the opinion of Beit Shammai, because he felt it was a more precise way to fulfill the mitzvah.
Okay, so just before he finishes, you can't imagine the notion that, Rabbi Tarfon is from the lineage of Beit Hillel, but he's not going to follow, everything that Beit Hillel would say, and even more so that he would follow, Beit Shammai, right? And I'll give you an example. I mean, and it's very. Anybody know how Beit Shammai wanted to light candles for Hanukkah? Okay, I have to give it to you. Tell me.
You wanted to start with 8 candles.
Yes.
And go down, and Hillel said, no, you should be adding, because we are adding light to celebration of miracle.
Right, exactly. So, so again, exactly what it said is.
Beit Shammai is actually the Orthodox, and Beit Hillel is kind of
The progressive, maybe. Yeah.
And yet, the predominant view that actually Orthodox Judaism follows
is Beit Hillel. Yeah. All right, but listen. My point is this. All right, regular. But my point is this. The concept is that Shammai had this great thing, and by the way, it actually makes a lot of sense. When do we feel the most, most of like the excitement about Hanukkah? It's like the first or the second night, right? I mean, by the time we get to the 8th night, okay, we're lighting the. I'm not. I still love lighting
we try
Hanukkah.
to do our Hanukkah party as close to the 8th night.
Yeah, but listen, I get it, but I'm just saying that in the end, as that time wanes, we're like, okay, I got to give the kids another present or this, it's not a, right. So what Shema said actually makes a lot of sense, right? Let's light them all to start with, and as our kind of, our spiritual sustenance sorts of wane, drop off a candle, so it actually makes sense. So here, Tarfon is like, dude, he's like, this guy was a little bit more, precise. I didn't put what probably should be the real word. The real word when you're in the Orthodox community is called mikdakdek, right? They say the yoter mikdakdekim. These cats are the more stringent, right? And so, but he said, I followed Shammai, so I needed to say all that. Now, here's the last statement. Rachel, go.
But I endangered myself due to the listed
Yep.
bandits who accost travelers. The sages said to him, you deserved to be guilty, liable to pay with your life, as you transgressed the words of Beit Hillel.
So can you imagine? Because you just heard our little discussion about Beit Hillel and Shammai, right? So you had these sages, not all of them, but there was a number of them. Can you imagine that they actually come up, that they're actually saying this? And this is in the Talmud. I don't make this stuff up now. That they're saying, well, you deserve to be liable to pay with your life as you transgress the words of Beit Hillel. Now, so I wrote that in there. So listim, do they call that hayom? Listim? No.
Steam?
Yeah, it's kind of.
Steam is robberies.
Yeah, the robberies. Yes, we're still using that, right? Yeah, okay. Yeah. So it's in the Talmud, listim are like bandits, And so they're coming to rob you, right? So they're saying, so what? These guys were coming to rob you. You could have lost your life. You followed Beit Shammai. You should have lost your life. I mean, can you imagine that we would say that, right? But here again, this is what you learn from the from the notes from the Rambam. We want you to hear, think about some of this kind of stuff, because I want you, I want to know that you're listening, right? I want to know that you're thinking, right? So, let's look at our discussion questions in our waning time. So, why are there two separate halakhic conclusions by our sages? What? Yeah, why?
Well, I think with like Havdalah and Shema is Hillel's for this world and Shema is more for the world to come, and you can be more precise when things are more aligned with how they should be. Then we could follow Shema. But I guess for now we're stuck with whoever is in our community. That's who we should follow. We should stick to the tradition we were brought up with. It's kind of where they're at now, and where this problem was. We were brought up in a certain tradition. You're expected to stay. Jumping around or just picking and choosing like a buffet. You're like, yeah, I like that group, this group, and put together my own. I don't think that's allowed to do that.
We have a tradition that's turn it over and over and over again, and look at it from every angle, which goes totally opposite of what your conclusion is. Because actually the long tradition, where it's scholarly tradition in Judaism, that look at things from different angles, and that in fact we see things from different ways at different times. When Moses was about to die, God let him look into the future and saw the academies that were having debates like this. And
by the way, that's that's midrash. By the way, that's not from Torah. Keep going.
Yeah, but midrash is part of the
I'm not.
It's part of our oral.
Right. I don't dispute. I'm just saying that's not in Torah. Keep going.
Moses says, I have no idea what they're talking about.
That's right.
God says, you don't need to know what they were talking about. They need to know about it in their time. You need to know what you need to know in your time. I'm letting you know that your life is relevant.
That's right. All right. So this brings up another kind of folk by the Hule, right? That we turn it, and we're always learning, right? So this is this is right. Yeah. I don't. And interesting that you went to the Beit Shammai and Hillel. It could be that we're talking about the halakhic decisions of Rabban Gamliel and Rabbi Eliezer too, right? The notion of like you only have till midnight, right? No, wait a minute. You have till right. So so these are we have a couple of ways to look at these separate conclusions. All right. So I came up with here, and let's hear from for some other people. Time versus posture is what I'm going to call it. The Torah says, when you lie down and when you rise, do you think the emphasis is more on a time of day or physical posture?
Time of day.
I'll say posture. Because we can have different schedules. So in my mind, really when you rise.
So what does a person do if they can't ever rise? Do they only say the Shema once?
Or when they become conscious of it.
Can you explain the posture?
Okay, so
Your position whether you're sitting, standing, lying down.
Right. So
I'm going with time of day. Like you said, some people cannot go up.
what about in your position?
It's both because it's time of day, telling us when to do it, but also, if you think about it, when you're lying down, you're going to be in a more submissive posture, submitting to you. And then before you rise up, that's just saying you're putting him before, or when you rise up, it's the first thing you do of the day. Like it's still, again, submitting the will, starting the day, submitting the will.
Boy, I like that. 1 second. Keep your thoughts. So here we go. 1, 2, and then don't lose your thoughts. This is interesting, Rachel. So I'd love to go back for us here to get a lens into your life. When you were a kid, right? Forget the Judaism part, just, and I don't know if you were a Christian or whatever you were doing. How did you do? Did you do like a nightly prayer or a prayer, prayers? So how did that happen in your room?
Kneeling.
At the bed, right? This is a concept that we don't know in Judaism, right? So the notion see, in her house, they were taught to kneel at the mitah. He was taught to what? Lie on the mitah, right? From here, right? And that we were going to do it. So the posture does seem to matter. What does it mean for submission, as Rachel is saying, to God? How do we understand that? And how do we feel that, by the way, right? So I think that's a very, very astute, and the timing. So in the morning, did you say prayers in the morning too?
We did.
Okay, so that I would say that's more the normative thing. So the submission at night, but not necessarily in the morning, where the rabbis are teaching. Oh no, it says in the Torah when you lie down and when you rise up.
We didn't even pray in the morning, but we did start by reading the word of God.
Okay, so they read the Bible. Okay, all right, that's very interesting. All right, here we go.
Well, maybe I'm being too literal, but I think you need those posture and time. Because if you take a nap in the middle of the day, then you are lying down and then you're rising up again.
Oh, could be. So that's interesting. So should we say, and that's, and it's very interesting when we talk. I've thought about that before. Great concept. In our services, by the way, we sort of see how this works too, right? In the morning service, do we say Shema? Yes, we do. In the evening service, do we say Shema? Yes, we do.
We're not lying down.
And we're not.
If you have to see somebody lying down,
I'm with you.
in Marie.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
Name one.
Right. I'm with you. So then we're probably saying it again. So which raises this kind of question. But even more. So we have three services, right? We have the morning service called Shacharit. We have the evening service called Ma'ariv, but we also have the afternoon service, which is called Mincha, which also comes from the sacrament. In Mincha, okay, in the service itself, there's no Shema, which is interesting, right? So I find that fascinating the way the rabbis, came up with that. Well, we did it here, but we don't do it in Mincha. But do we do it when we just get up in the morning? You're supposed to. Do we do it when we're when we're going to lie down? We're supposed to. But maybe we have other times in the day because of the way that works. Maybe we should be saying it if we take a nap, right?
So Shavuot, Erev Shavuot,
Yeah.
and Hoshana Rabbah.
Yeah.
You stay awake all night.
Right.
You say Shema on the Mikah or not?
But in that case, it might not be mitah. It might be, it might be omeh, right? So it's very interesting. Or when do you go to sleep after that? By the way, you go to sleep acharei shacharit. You go to sleep acharei shacharit. So you could say, that your Shema at shacharit was like, right for the line down.
What I remember when I was Orthodox, Christian, so he was saying it, the Shema, but he was taking some chapters out, okay? And in the morning, also, you don't need to wash your hands to say the ani because you didn't sleep.
Because you didn't sleep, right?
What I thought, you need to say it because what if suddenly you fall asleep, stay all night,
Right.
If you suddenly fall asleep,
Oh, standing up, right? Maybe you can. I guess, Yeah, I guess if somebody you lean on the wall or something like that, right?
because I remember I was trying to, when I was a kid, trying to stay awake and leaning the wall and just falling asleep. It's hard.
My oldest son, when I was young, would always keep standing up in the evening.
I was falling asleep and a lot of, now I can say, the military, I was doubting, fell asleep.
Yeah, right. Here it goes, right?
I was practicing falling
I'm gonna have to
asleep.
check with, I gotta check with the IDF now. All right, I wanna get 4 and 5 and I know then we're gonna do Havdalah, but I just, quickly. So I have this risk and stringency, right? So you have here, Rabbi Tarfon endangered himself by following a stricter opinion, right? What does this story teach us about being overly strict in religious practice, right? And then you have the, when might stringency be appropriate and maybe when might it be somewhat problematic? Very interesting, right?
If strictness endangers your life or your health, it's inappropriate.
Okay.
We're allowed to compromise on just about anything with the exception of you may not commit murder in order to protect our life. You said you're going to kill Phyllis unless she kills me. Phyllis cannot kill me for that. She can't kill you because that's self-defense, but she cannot take it into and be innocent third party life in order to preserve her own.
Okay.
We're not allowed to commit idolatry and save our life.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not allowed to prostitute ourselves to save our life. And that specifically refers to the sacred prostitution of the cultic practices. So it's really a other than that, you're even allowed to eat. You're allowed to eat treifa if it's necessary to save your life. And the basis of that is when it came into practice in the 20th century with the issue of insulin, because insulin initially was derived from animal products, and one of them was pork because people would develop antibodies. And so the halakhic authorities were asked, can a religiously observant Jew use pork insulin? And the answer was yes. Because, these are the things you're supposed to do. We're supposed to preserve our life. And came up again with the argument with pork heart valves.
Right. Okay. All right. Just make some good points with that. Right. When we talk about, this notion of stringency, I'm going to give all that he said there. You boil all that down from the Ben Sorer or Moreh that we find in the Talmud, because they come to one, and that's the wayward son. By the way, there's a whole teaching that includes a lot of this stuff in there. But they boil it down to one concept, right? This is what it says in, from the rabbis, and they talk about the mitzvot in general. This is what they say: chai b'hem, v'lo met b'hem. All right. So you live by doing the mitzvot, but you can't die by doing the mitzvot. All right. So this is kind of an interesting concept when we talk about it. So other thoughts about this notion of being overly strict in religious practice.
What about Yihalek Ve'al Ya'arov?
Okay.
No?
Tell me.
You should get killed and not do that things. And what we learn, you cannot eat the pork, you should get killed.
Right. Yeah. I think though I'm pretty sure though in the halakhic concept though that you have the chai b'hem v'lo met b'hem is a superseding that. I don't know, but we need to look that up. I need to see that.
It says Yihalek Ve'al Ya'arov.
Okay. Right. Okay. All right. I'm not discounting. I gotta look that up. Who else? Yeah.
I think a lot of times people just think, well, whatever's most convenient. And then it looks like you have situational ethics to everyone around you, like this guy does what he wants to do. And then when he's pushed into a situation, you always take the easy route. Then nobody trusts you, nobody takes you serious. Because you
credibility.
Yeah, you have no credibility. People will be like, well, it's not convenient to eat kosher today, so I'm going to eat whatever's available. So I think you should strive to do the most that you can when you can, as long as it's not a life or death or health issue.
Okay. All right. So that's interesting. All right. So look at number 5 down there, the last one. The Mishnah shows disagreement about the latest time to recite Shema, right? The midnight versus dawn. Why might the sages set earlier limits than what is technically permitted? What does this tell us about the role of safeguards, right? Gezerot, right? There's actually a, they have there's a halakhic concept called siyag al siyag, but I'm not going to define it. He knows, but I don't want to define
It's
it.
basically a fence.
That's what a siyag is,
Oh,
right?
right, but that's doing right there.
Yes. So it's putting a fence, right, around a fence, actually. So this concept that not only are we just learning from simple Shema, it brings us to this concept when we talk about the midnight or we talk about the dawn. It shows us this concept of what the rabbis call siyag al siyag, that you put a fence around a fence. Now, why do the rabbis do that?
People need it. They're gonna push that limit. If you say, 6 o'clock, they're gonna walk in at 6:05. So you wanna say, hey, I might wanna come in at 5:45 kind of.
Oh, so you live on Jewish Standard Time?
It's just about the nature.
So an example of, coming up on Pesach, an example of fences around fences around fences.
Yeah.
The Torah specifies 5 things that must be made into matzah in order to be consumed during Pesach. They are 5 grains. At one point in Jewish history, in European Jewish history, legumes became prohibited. And even as a fence against that, because the thought was, well, maybe people might mistake that a legume was a grain, because you can grind it into flour. Then later on, in medieval Europe, small potatoes were prohibited because they're round and they're small and they're like grains, and you can make a potato starch flour. And so you have a fence upon a fence. And then we get to where it's like, oh, you can't have green beans or your hair will catch on fire. And all of this, Sephardic Jews don't have this mishigash because it wasn't part of the Sephardic rabbis putting fences around fences. Maybe because they don't have snow, they don't have snow fences like we have in Wyoming. Right. But because somebody was like, well, this is how my grandmother did it, so I'm going to be more strident than my grandmother because I'm going to show mom that I'm more strident in the next. And you get overstringency, and that it becomes a point where you get bibliosclerosis, the hardening of the brain when it comes to Torah.
Okay, so I mean, so we learn a little bit about how do we think about Judaism? How do we listen for what it means to practice, right? I mean, we sort of get that out of this as well. We think about these safeguards and what it means to do that. So, I share that with you because sometimes we have to be listening for, I suppose we could say what makes sense, where we are in life. A lot of times people, let's just take kashrut, and people are asking me certain things about what kashrut might look like for them and so forth. And, I have simple questions. It's like, what do you think things were like 300 or 400 years ago, right? We didn't have kashrut, back then, right? We had kasher, right? Did the shochet, slaughter the animal? Is the shochet following Torah? Because, the rabbis believe that, that if you're touching, things, that other people are going to eat, you should be a Shomer Shabbat, or you should be,
something more.
Yeah.
Yain Nesset, you know what?
Yain Nesset, yes, it's boiling the wine. So, this is a whole discussion that got had actually in the 20th century, by the way. Could you have wine that's not been boiled, that's been treated?
Yain Nesset is if someone Gentile or a Jew that did not keep in the Shabbat touch a bottle of wine that was open,
right,
is not allowed to drink this wine. Even if it touched like and the bottle was just open, you're not allowed to touch it.
Right. So they have the whole concept of not only even in the boiling, if they're not doing it, then there's the Nogea piece, but it even went farther past that. If you have a vineyard where people are, just there's nothing that's going to be non-kosher about taking grapes and making wine with that. Okay, so I mean, except for maybe there's if you don't have a rabbi kind of looking in to say, well, yeah, that's going to look okay when you take the grapes, make sure that they're washed right, and all these kind of things. We're pressing it, all the things that and I'm not an expert in in Rashi's winemaking and stuff here. But the concept of so that became an issue though, just because even the touching, right? If you have somebody who's touching, just like I said, slaughtering and so forth, who's not, keeping the mitzvot, can we eat that? Can we drink that? All of these kind of concepts. So all of those things, these things have kind of come, over time. And so, part of our listening is saying to ourselves, okay, I need to practice in ways, so to speak, that my community does. And as leaders of a community, we have to do things that make sense. And I'll leave you with one thought. The rabbis even teach within the context of the Talmud that you're not allowed to put like a log, but it's like a stumbling block in front of your congregants, right? Because if you do that, then you're causing them to violate a mitzvah, right? So I try to be very conscious of that. Because if I teach you about a specific mitzvah or some way that I do something or a way that, and then all of a sudden you don't do that, now I've taught that to you and you're not engaged in that mitzvah. Now you have become lo yotzei, right? You're not doing the mitzvah. So this is what the Rambam wants us to listen to. And I share that with you here as we are on Shabbat Hagadol, right? Big Shabbat going into Pesach, because we have to think about our reclining, not hardening our hearts, all the things that we have to be paying attention to, right? You have to ask, the doctor is paying attention. That's why he uses that stethoscope, he's listening, So, yes, you want the shura? I'm going to give you the shura tachtuna. You know what the shura tachtuna is?
Final comment about.
Wait a minute. We have to define the shura tachtuna, right? What's a shura? What's a shura in Hebrew? That's a line, right? A shura is a line. Okay, what's a tuchus in Hebrew?
What you sit on.
Right. So you get the bottom line.
I think to keep it simple of all things, whether one rabbi said something and one rabbi did. The main reason is while you're conscious, you wake up, you have God in your heart. When you go lay down, when your mind's ready to close off for the night, again, leave God, and basically telling you appreciate him during the time.
I cannot add anything to that.
Aviv.
All right.
Aviv.
Let me get my guitar and we're gonna let's
Aviv,
do
תראה מה יש לי
turn the
בשבילך.
light.
תראה, אביב.
So I want to add one thing, the timing on this is interesting. I just finished shelving all books I could find on Blocker in the library, and we have more than one shelf full. Not ready to check out, that's gonna be a long time from now, but we thought,
Do you have a book about opinions?
By
that's
the
what I'm
way,
saying.
Steve.
Oh, yeah, many books are responsive, yeah.
What is the fault?
The two.
2 Jews and 3. Oh, my God,
Things-
yeah, oh,
When
that one, I
Yeah.
don't know, I haven't seen it yet. Probably.
בוא תעמוד פה, תעמוד כאן, תחזיק. בוא. ככה.
It's cool.
עכשיו, כן.
I can't find my pick in the dark. You have to do it shine in style, right? Then my makeup does. You figured it out. Oh, it's gonna sound very bad if I don't put a tape on. All right, do we have here, let's, all right, let's put it on there. I'm gonna let you put the grape juice in.
Wait. Okay.
What is this, a trick, we got the trick in? Oh. All right, here we go, just like this. Hey, oh, 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 everybody try that easy AO. Hey, oh, oh, it's good. Here's the yai-lies. I'm trying to pick apart either A, O, or the I line. Let's see how slick everybody is. Here we go. Keep it going. The first bracha is the wine, so go ahead and lift the cup. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei b'ri hagafei The second bracha is for the besamim, for the spices, right? One everybody's gonna sniff and sniff it. Shabbat obviously smells so good that you hate to let it go, right? That's why the rabbis came up with sweet smelling spices, right? So here we go. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Orei nevesogi, orei midei tisami. Orei midei tisami. Now the next bracha is for, it's not for the light itself, the ash, it's actually for using the ash. So the mitzvah is actually for you to be able to look and see something with the light, right? So the tradition is we turn our hands, over into the light so we can see it just like that. So that's what we do at the bracha, right? Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Orei ha'esh. Orei ha'esh. So the next one, that's how you do it? Okay. So the next one is the actual separation of Shabbat, right? Havdalah ben Kodesh, right? Here we go. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Havdalah ben Kodesh hear the wicks going out. Havdalah ben Kodesh It occurs to me that maybe we should have gotten some of the secret email, particularly for the next part, but that's all right. Here we go. Havdalah ben Kodesh Nefol, Chatoteinu Yifol, Sarenu v'chaspenu Yabeh Yabeh Kachol, Bekachol Chavim Halayla. Shavuot, and you turn to the person next to you, you say, have a good week. Shavuot, Shavuot, repeat after me. Shavuot, everybody. Shavuot. Now turn to the person next to you. Shavuot, 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 Shavuot. What does it mean? A good week, a week of peace. May gladness reign and joy increase. A good week, a week of peace. May gladness reign and joy increase. priest. Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu, Eliyahu, Eliyahu Agilari, Biferav Beyameku, Yahweh Eloheinu, in Mashiach ben David, in Mashiach ben David, Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu, Eliyahu, Eliyahu Hagilai. Boy, I got away from my fingers there. All right, Shavua Tov, everybody. It was a wonderful night to study. I learned a lot about people and their thought processes, and I really enjoyed that. Robinson enjoyed being here. Although I will have to say this, she's the real hero because she's the one that walks around with Lily when I'm teaching and so forth. So we all know that, like I said to somebody this morning. And by the way, you can keep the papers if you want. If you don't have your own text files truly for yourself, you should have a text file for yourself at home. And so that you put, every time you get a text, you put that in there. And then later on, in your life, sometimes you think about things, you pull it out and you read it and go through things again. So
Please,
yeah, you have to take pieces home. So we've we enjoyed being here, and I really appreciate all of our time that we had together.
we appreciate you coming up.
I think it was a good time. I think it was a very good time, and I appreciate that. All right. All right. Yeah, we have got to get back to work. Yeah, because I got to get her back here from Rome and then get ready for the week. I've got a little bit of work to do, like a PhD. So,
Sherry, did you want to have a chance to talk with Rabbi?
Oh, I'll just tell him thank you.
Okay. I will do that.
Yeah, so I appreciated his classes and his services and really enjoyed it.
All right.
okay, very good.
Okay.
Yes.
We have one of our board members here. If you'd like to just say hello.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Let me do that. Sure, absolutely. Hello there.
Hello, it's nice to meet you.
Oh, my honor, truly. Hi there.
I live over in Laramie, so I don't get over too often, but
Okay, all right.
I really, really enjoyed your services and I appreciated your class tonight and it was great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You're okay, Sherry?
Pardon me?
Was the audio okay?
It cuts out every time the guitar plays. I don't know what happens,
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Interesting. All right.
but yeah, it was not too bad tonight though.
All right. I appreciate
Yeah.
that. Thank you. All
Yeah.
right.
Thank
Yeah,
you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, have a good, wonderful week, and thank you for being with us for Shabbat.
You too. You too. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks for
All right.
coming up.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.
Oh.